Hey, golden boy, this is no place for a cripple like you.
The words echoed through the cafeteria of Crestwood Academy, a school where wealth defined a person's worth. Jason Miller, the most popular guy in school, spat out the insult right in the face of E.J. Whitmore, the limping boy, only son of a billionaire, yet someone who had never truly had a single real friend. The food tray hit the floor with a harsh metallic clang. Food scattered across the glossy tile. E.J. Whitmore froze as one of his crutches was yanked from his hand and lifted high like a trophy. "Careful there, limping like that and you still dare show up here?" one boy sneered. The crowd roared. Red light from dozens of recording phones glared like hungry eyes. Another kid threw a cup of orange juice at him. "Can't even stand straight, billionaire boy?" Chants of "fight, fight" spread like a cruel anthem. Some laughed. Others stayed silent. That particular kind of cowardly silence only a crowd can have. At the far corner, Amara Johnson set her chopsticks down. Not hurriedly, not loudly. She just watched. For a long time. The bullies didn't notice when she stood up. And when she did, no one in that glittering cafeteria knew. Everything was about to change forever. E.J. Whitmore was no stranger to humiliation. To him, it clung like a shadow that refused to leave. At just 10 years old, he had already lost more than most adults ever would. His mother, Clara, the woman who used to lull him to sleep with a voice soft as starlight. Before cancer took her, she only had time to say one last thing. "The stars don't care how fast you walk, E.J. They'll still shine for you." But at Crestwood Academy, the most prestigious school in the city, E.J. couldn't find a single star shining for him. He limped from birth, and every hallway felt like a battlefield. Sneakers squeaked behind him like mockery. Nicknames followed him everywhere. Prince Cripple, Rich Daddy's Boy, Can your father's money buy you a new pair of legs? That was the one he hated most. Because even though his father, Richard Whitmore, was a billionaire, money couldn't buy the one thing E.J. longed for most, to live like a normal kid. After his mother died, Richard grew distant. He loved his son, but he spoke in contracts and deadlines, not lullabies. Meetings replaced bedtime stories, and in their mansion that felt more like a hotel, E.J. ate dinner alone. He learned to shrink himself, to lower his head, to hold on to his mother's words like a shield. "You still have worth, even when the world can't see it." Meanwhile, across the city, another child carried a different kind of pain. Amara Johnson, a black girl, 10 years old, daughter of Anthony Johnson, a martial arts instructor and the pride of their neighborhood. He used to say, "Never strike first, never fight for pride, only fight when someone needs protection." But a heart attack took him right there in the dojo. The echo of his laughter turned into emptiness. Her mother, Yvonne, a nurse, worked double shifts, her back bent with exhaustion. Bills piled up on the table, clothes came from thrift stores, shoes worn thin. The only thing Amara inherited wasn't wealth. It was her father's code. She still visited the cracked dojo floor, bowing before the empty space where his spirit once stood. Each stance, each breath, was a conversation with the dead. But Amara didn't boast. She didn't talk much. At Crestwood, she was just the scholarship girl. Whispers followed her. "So poor. Look at those shoes." She never answered, but in her silence, there was steel. E.J. and Amara, two children from opposite worlds. One wrapped in gold but starved of warmth. The other living in struggle but rich with pride. Both mocked for things they never chose. And fate, somehow, led them to the same brightly lit cafeteria. For E.J., every day was survival. For Amara, every day was restraint. Neither wanted to be tested, but life always tests the quiet ones to reveal their true strength. Crestwood Academy gleamed like a glass palace. Hallways so polished that students could see their Prada shoes reflected on the floor. Teslas lined the gates. Chauffeurs opened doors, carrying monogrammed briefcases like treasures. Rolex watches flashed under fluorescent lights. Here, power didn't need to speak. It radiated. EJ walked through those halls, his crutch tapping like a metronome, a reminder that he didn't belong. Cold stares slid across him, whispers followed behind. Amara walked too, in old, discounted shoes her mother bought, jeans with frayed hems, a backpack whose zipper jammed every time she pulled it. Her lunch was rice and beans, sometimes cold noodles in a plastic box. In a cafeteria where students swiped cards for sushi and milkshakes, her meal became a joke. "Smells like poverty," someone said. Phones recorded the laughter, but not her calm eyes or the chopsticks still steady in her hand. At Crestwood, money was armor. EJ had armor but refused to wear it. Amara had none, yet she still stood tall, and the bullies lived for tearing down people like that. Jason Miller, the king of Crestwood. Blonde hair slicked back, his name carved into the gym wall, his sneakers worth more than a family's rent. He laughed loudly because no one dared to make him stop. Beside him were Connor Hale and Bryce Turner, his loyal guards. They didn't bow because it seemed the ground bowed for them. EJ was invisible until they chose to see him. Amara became a target, just for stepping into their line of sight. The cafeteria became an arena. Phones raised high, red lights flashing. No one asked, "Should we stop?" They only asked, "Will this go viral?" Then came that fateful Friday. Metal clattered, laughter, screams, all blending together. Jason strode toward EJ's table, a smug smile on his face. Connor cracked his knuckles. Bryce lifted his phone, a hard shove. The lunch tray flipped. Milk splattered, soaking EJ's shirt. The whole room erupted, not in outrage, but in delight. But in the corner, Amara stood. She didn't shout. She didn't rush in. She simply stepped forward, her eyes blazing. And in that moment, everything in that shining room changed forever. Phones raised higher, lenses zooming in. The chant began at the back of the room, low and rhythmic. Then louder, faster, pounding like war drums. "Fight! Fight!" EJ trembled as he bent down to pick up his crutch, but Connor was faster. He snatched it away and raised it high like a championship trophy. "Who wants the stick?" he laughed, his voice booming through the cafeteria. The crowd erupted. Some screamed in delight, others forced uneasy laughs, afraid that if they didn't join in, they'd be next. The cafeteria was no longer a lunchroom. It had become an arena. EJ bent lower, his breathing shallow, desperate to disappear, to melt into the cold tile beneath him. And then, Amara stood up. Not in haste, not shouting. She simply walked, slowly, steadily. The chopstick still in her hand, a quiet symbol of absolute composure. She moved through the noise like someone stepping into the eye of a storm. At first, no one noticed her. Every phone was pointed at EJ, the billionaire's son being humiliated. But then Jason caught sight of her. He smirked. "Well, well, look who it is. Our little scholarship girl." Connor laughed, twirling the crutch. "Gonna protect him? Or do you want to limp together?" Laughter burst out, sharp as needles. But Amara didn't react. She bent down, not to fight, but to pick up EJ's fallen tray. She placed it gently back on the table, straightened the toppled chair. Every movement calm, deliberate. EJ looked up, stunned. She didn't say a word, but her eyes spoke louder than any voice could. "You're not alone," Jason sneered. "Touching, what is this, a pity party?" He stepped closer, his breath hot on her face. "All right, show me what you've got, scholarship girl." He shoved EJ again. EJ stumbled, nearly falling, but Amara caught him, her hand on his shoulder, soft but steady. The entire room went silent. Jason mistook the silence for fear and laughed. "Wanna fight? Go ahead, try me." He swung his fist. No one really saw what happened next. only that Amara moved, fluid and fast. She sidestepped, graceful as water. The punch hit nothing but air, Jason's momentum pulling him forward. Amara turned her hips slightly, her hand brushing his wrist. Bang! Jason slammed into a table. The room froze. No one could believe what they'd just seen. Connor shouted, his face red with rage, and charged in with a clumsy kick. Amara shifted her weight, her arms flashing like lightning. A subtle twist, and Connor went airborne, crashing to the floor like a rag doll. Silence. Absolute silence. No laughter, no phones buzzing, just shock. EJ stood upright, for the first time in years. Amara picked up the fallen crutch and handed it to him, her voice quiet but firm. Stand tall. EJ took a deep breath, and for the first time, he truly stood. Not with the crutch, but with his dignity. Jason struggled to his feet, face flushed, eyes wide with panic. The whole cafeteria watched Amara, the girl they'd all once called invisible. She didn't yell, she didn't strike, she didn't seek revenge. Her calm was terrifying. She didn't even hit them, someone whispered. She just controlled everything. The whisper spread like fire through paper. Jason, humiliated, charged again. But Amara didn't flinch. At the last possible moment, she turned, using his own momentum against him. Jason lost balance and crashed into the wall. Gasps, screams. "Who is she?" someone shouted. Amara's face remained expressionless. She wasn't fighting. She was teaching. In her mind, her father's voice echoed, clear as it had sounded all those years ago in their small dojo. The smell of wood, sweat, sunlight streaming through the cracks. Little Amara crying, fists trembling. "Why can't I hit them back, Dad? They make fun of me every day." Her father knelt down, eyes kind yet hard as steel. "Because, Amara, real strength isn't proving you can hurt someone. It's knowing you don't have to. But what if they don't stop?" He smiled sadly. "Then you stand up. You protect, but you never start the fight. You only fight for one reason, to protect the weak." That voice rang in her heart as she faced Jason one last time. He lunged again, desperate now, no longer proud. "Stop, Jason," someone shouted. But he didn't listen. Another punch, another turn, and he went down, not hurt, but defeated by his own arrogance. Connor tried to rise, shouting, but Amara stopped him with a single motion. A quick wrist turn, clean, effortless, controlled. No violence. Just enough for him to understand. Strength doesn't need noise. The cafeteria exploded. But this time, not with laughter, with awe. "She's trained. That's real martial arts." "Who is she?" Amara stood there, not proud, just calm. She picked up the crutch again and placed it back into EJ's hand. "Now," she said softly, "stand up on your own." EJ obeyed, and when he lifted his head, the room fell utterly silent. No one looked at him with pity anymore. But the moment of victory didn't last long. The sharp clack of high heels broke the stillness. The doors swung open. Vice Principal Sinclair entered, each step like a verdict. Her icy gaze swept the room. She didn't look at Jason, still cowering. She didn't look at Connor, sprawled on the floor, her eyes fixed only on Amara. "You too," she barked, voice cold as steel. "Suspended. Effective immediately." The whole room held its breath. "What? That's not fair," someone shouted. Phones turned toward Amara. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just nodded once and walked away. Because sometimes justice doesn't live in the decisions of adults, but in the eyes of the children who just witnessed what's right. The phones stayed raised, cameras catching everything. The chant that had once started as a cruel whisper now returned, but slower, heavier, echoing like a reckoning. "Fight! Fight!" EJ reached for his crutch, but Connor had already grabbed it, holding it high like a warped trophy. "Hot item here! Who wants a turn?" he shouted, and laughter erupted again. Some students stood on their seats, eager for the show. Others laughed nervously, afraid of becoming the next target. The cafeteria was no longer a lunchroom. It was a coliseum. The spectators were classmates. The show, a child's humiliation. EJ's shoulders curled in, his breath short and trembling. He wanted nothing more than to disappear into the floor. And then Amara moved. No hurry, no shouting. She rose from her corner table and walked forward, straight-backed, her face calm. The chopstick still in her hand. A reminder: control first, react later. She crossed the noisy cafeteria as if walking straight into the heart of a storm. At first, no one noticed. Every camera lens was still locked on the humiliated billionaire's son. Then Jason caught sight of her. His grin widened. Well, look who it is. The scholarship girl. Connor swung the crutch gleefully. His bodyguard, huh? Or you want to practice limping together? The crowd burst into laughter. Amara didn't even frown. She bent down, not to fight, but to pick up the food tray scattered across the floor, placing it neatly back on the table. She straightened EJ's fallen chair, each movement slow and precise, like a measured drill. EJ looked up at her, frozen. She said nothing, but her eyes locked onto his, solid, unwavering like stone. "You're not alone," Jason sneered. "Adorable. What's this, a pity party?" He stepped so close that his breath brushed against her cheek. "All right then, show us what you've got." He shoved EJ again. The boy staggered, reaching out, but Amara caught him. One hand on his shoulder, light but firm, stopping the fall cold. The entire cafeteria fell silent. Jason mistook the quiet for fear and laughed. "Want to fight? Come on then." His fist flew, and Amara wasn't there anymore. A soft, fluid sidestep, water slipping past stone. His punch cut through empty air, his own momentum throwing him forward. Amara rotated her hips, brushed his wrist. Thud! Jason crashed into a table, the trays clattering like thunder. Connor roared, charging like a boulder. His clumsy kick shot toward EJ, but Amara was faster. She caught his leg, twisted, redirected the force, and Connor flipped through the air like a rag doll, hitting the floor hard. The cafeteria froze. No more laughter, only wide eyes and disbelief. EJ, for the first time all year, stood upright. Amara picked up the crutch and handed it to him. "Stand tall," she said quietly. Jason pushed himself up, his face flushed red, torn between fury and confusion. Every camera now pointed toward the once invisible girl no one had ever noticed. She didn't shout. She didn't hit back. She controlled. She didn't even punch him," someone whispered. "She just controlled it." The whisper spread like wildfire through paper. Jason lunged again, desperate to win back his audience. Amara didn't move until the very last moment. A half-step pivot, a redirection of balance. And the wall answered for her. Cries of shock. Phones shaking in trembling hands. What the hell was that? Amara's face didn't change. She wasn't fighting. She was performing discipline. Inside her chest, her father's voice echoed from the old dojo. Strength isn't proving you can hurt someone. Strength is knowing you don't have to. If they don't stop, you stand, move, protect. But never start the fight. You fight for only one thing, to protect the weak. Jason charged one final time. Amara guided his arm past her, redirecting the energy, letting him fall safely. His pride bruised, but not his body. Connor tried to rise, growling. She locked his wrist, turned, and pinned him with just enough pressure to make him understand. Strength doesn't need noise. The cafeteria erupted, but not with laughter this time, with astonishment. She's trained. That's real martial arts, not brawling. Who is she? Amara placed the crutch back into EJ's hand. Stand tall. He obeyed, not because he needed support, but because he no longer wanted to bow. And then came the sharp click of heels striking tile like a gavel. The door burst open. Vice Principal Sinclair stormed in, her eyes slicing through the room like blades. She didn't look at Jason, still shrinking in embarrassment, nor at Connor sprawled on the floor. She looked straight at Amara. "You two," she snapped, her tone cold as steel. "Suspended, effective immediately." The air thickened. "What? That's not fair." Voices rose in protest. "We didn't start it," someone said weakly. Mrs. Sinclair didn't blink. "I've seen enough. Violence is unacceptable, no matter the reason." Jason wiped juice off his shirt, smirking faintly, thinking he'd just gotten away with it. And Jasmine stepped forward. An 11th grader, phone still raised. Her voice trembled, but carried. "Ma'am, you haven't seen enough. I recorded everything." The room gaped. Every gaze locked onto the glowing screen in her hand. Jason's smile cracked. Connor swallowed. Jasmine walked straight to the smartboard. One tap. The video filled the screen. Jason shoving, EJ stumbling, Connor throwing a kick, Amara moving calmly, never striking first. The clip's audio washed over the cafeteria. Jason's laughter, the chant of "Fight!" and then the two bullies dropping by the force of their own momentum. Mrs. Sinclair's face flushed red. That does not excuse—" "It reveals the truth," Amara said, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. "We didn't fight for pride. We didn't start it. We only stood up when we were forced to." The cafeteria erupted. Cheers, applause, even tears from kids who knew too well what it felt like to be cornered. "Justice!" someone shouted. "Play it again!" another yelled. Phones now turned toward Mrs. Sinclair. Her authority wavered beneath evidence and witnesses. Jason scrambled up, pointing at Amara. "This isn't over." EJ stood beside Amara, his crutch steady as a milestone, and spoke, shaky at first, then firming. "It is." The room stood still. Until now, EJ had never spoken up like that. Those words weighed more than any punch. The chant rose again, but this time it didn't call for violence. It called for truth. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Amara didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply laid a hand on EJ's shoulder and repeated, as before, "Stand tall." And he did. For the first time, the Crestwood cafeteria wasn't ruled by arrogance or cruelty, but by discipline, truth, and two kids who refused to break. By evening, it was no longer Crestwood's secret. A shaky 40-second clip appeared on Instagram with the caption, "The scholarship girl just folded the bullies. Discipline beats arrogance." An hour later, TikTok was flooded with slow-mo cuts of Jason's fist slicing air. Music swelling as Amara turned and he crashed into the table. Comments poured in. "She's a weapon. Notice this. She didn't strike first. That's discipline. Double-folded Crestwood's golden boy in 10 seconds. By midnight, Twitter exploded. Hashtags shot to the top. Stand tall. Amara Johnson. Discipline over arrogance. The 6 p.m. local news couldn't ignore it. Split screen, the cafeteria clip and an old photo someone had dug up. Small Amara bowing in a dojo with cracked floors. Behind her, her father, Master Anthony Johnson. Tonight, a scholarship student defended a classmate from bullying at Crestwood Academy. And the world learned this. She's the daughter of a teacher who taught an entire neighborhood discipline, confidence, and respect. That legacy lives in her. The camera cut back to Amara handing EJ his crutch, whispering, "Stand tall." Millions rewound that line. For kids who'd been mocked, for parents praying their children would find courage. This wasn't just a cafeteria brawl. It was a lesson. But the biggest change didn't happen online. It happened in a penthouse overlooking the skyline. Richard Whitmore, a man who treated his phone like a weapon in boardroom wars, was halfway through drafting a merger email when a notification slid across his screen. Billionaire's son bullied. See who stood up for him? He almost ignored it, until the freeze frame showed EJ's crutch held aloft like a prize. He tapped play. The cafeteria spilled out of the screen, the shove, the tray, the shouts. He saw his son's shoulders close in, a posture he'd seen for months while telling himself, he'll grow out of it. Then a girl stepped into frame, calm. The room moved like a crashing wave and then suddenly stilled. Richard leaned forward, not noticing his fingers tremble. The girl didn't punch. She redirected. The two boys collapsed under their own momentum, while she kept EJ on his feet. When Amara placed the crutch in his son's hand, a voice he hadn't let himself hear in years returned. Clara. The stars don't care if you walk fast or slow, EJ. They still shine. For you. He rewound in slow motion. He watched EJ rise, heard his son say, "It's over." The room in the video roared. The penthouse, meanwhile, was silent. Richard searched the name. It was everywhere. Amara Johnson. Another photo appeared, the cracked-floored dojo. A man in a frayed GI smiling gently beside little Amara. Master Anthony Johnson. Obituaries, community posts. Words like discipline, respect, protect the weak. He set the phone down, for once not snatching the next email. He reached for memory instead. The missed recital, the rescheduled therapy session, the nights he told himself, "I'm building his future," while EJ learned how to become very small. He picked the phone up, typed, deleted, typed again. He remembered the night EJ asked why the stars shone brighter than he did, and how he'd had no answer. The final message appeared. "I'm proud of you. I'm on my way." He sent it. Then messaged his assistant. "Cancel the 3 p.m. Push the board. I'm going to Crestwood." The car pulled up to the portico. On the way, Richard watched the clip a third time with the sound off. Without audio, only posture remained. A girl choosing discipline over display. A boy choosing to stand instead of shrink. At a red light, he opened notes and wrote one line. Ask, don't assume. Below it, support what's there. Don't stage something shiny. He didn't think about press conferences or plaques. He thought about listening to EJ first, and then listening to the girl who had given his son a moment no money could buy. At the school gate, Richard pocketed his phone. This time he didn't lead with power, he led with presence. The next morning, the Crestwood cafeteria wasn't a lunchroom. It was a courtroom. Jason Miller and Connor Hale entered with hunched shoulders, their swagger evaporated. Their parents followed. Suits and pearls couldn't hide the pallor of a shame money couldn't purchase away. Phones rose again. Everyone knew history was about to be rewritten. Principal Harrington stood at the front, suit pressed, though the stack of papers in his hands still quivered. He cleared his throat. Yesterday's incident has drawn widespread attention. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Even a few teachers in the back couldn't suppress it. Based on video evidence, he continued, the truth is clear. The conflict was not initiated by Amara Johnson or Elijah Whitmore. They acted in self-defense and with restraint. The words landed like a gavel. Scattered claps, then a swell, a wave of applause. Jason's face burned. Connor avoided everyone's eyes, fidgeting as cameras recorded their smallness. "Jason, Connor," Harrington said, voice flat as a ruler. "Your families have agreed you must take responsibility." Jason's father nudged him forward. Jason swallowed, his voice cracking. I'm sorry." He looked at EJ, then at Amara. "We shouldn't have mocked you. We shouldn't have shoved you. You didn't deserve that." Connor followed, jaw tight. "We embarrassed ourselves, and our families." The room murmured, not at the apologies themselves, but at how much smaller their voices were than the laughter they'd once used to crush others. Amara didn't nod, didn't smile. She stood, calm but sharp as a blade. "Don't just apologize to us. Apologize to everyone you made small. We weren't your first targets, only your last." The cafeteria froze. Amara's words cut deeper than any throw. Jason's lips trembled. Connor turned away. Then Jason faced forward again and spoke louder. "We're sorry, to everyone." Connor nodded, forcing the words out. "We were wrong." The room erupted. Cheers, applause, foot stomps rattled the glossy floor. The balance of power had flipped, and in a high penthouse above the skyline, Richard Whitmore sat beside his son, not to direct, but to listen. Outside, the hashtags kept scrolling. Inside, a father relearned fatherhood. Ask, don't judge. Be present, don't justify. Because some days, justice doesn't come from a podium, but from the way one child knows how to stand tall, and another dares to stand beside him. For the first time in years, there were no emails, no contracts, no keyboard clatter. Only quiet. Broken by EJ's soft laugh as he rewatched the clip of himself standing tall in the cafeteria. Richard looked at his son, his voice rough. Your mother used to say, someone would help you stand. I think we just met her. EJ turned, his smile small but deep. No, Dad. She didn't just help me stand. She helped you, too. For the first time in years, Richard opened his arms and embraced his son. No words, no justifications, just real presence. And in that moment, everything on money, power, prestige, shrank before the two things no amount of wealth can buy: courage and connection. They had mocked a boy for the way he walked. They had scorned a girl for being too quiet. They had believed strength lived in money, in sneers, in arrogance. But when violence broke out, what silenced the room wasn't brute force. It was discipline. Amara Johnson didn't need designer clothes or fame. She carried her father's teaching in her heart, and with it, she gave EJ something more precious than anything money could buy: his own voice. Together, they made Crestwood Academy understand a simple truth. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it is simply standing firm and refusing to fall. In a cafeteria built on privilege and pride, two kids who once seemed invisible taught the entire school its loudest lesson. A single act of calm can shake even the noisiest room. But this story isn't just about EJ or Amara. It's about every child who walks the hallway feeling forgotten. It's about every parent who's ever wondered whether their lessons still matter. It's about every bully who thought silence meant weakness. Because silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the very thing that makes others stop. These are Black stories, where the underestimated rise and arrogance collapses under its own weight. If this story moved you, tap the heart and share it. Share it for every kid who's ever been mocked, for every mother and father who've prayed their child would find courage, for every voice that was ignored until it stood tall. And subscribe for more stories like this, because bullies only win when courage stays silent. And courage only triumphs when we dare to face forward, stand tall, and refuse to look away.